And joining us now is John Grinspan, political history curator at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History and author of Age of Acrimony: How Americans Fought to Fix Their Democracy, 1865 to 1915. John, big welcome to you. Look, President Biden says we're on the cusp of an oligarchy. That's a stark warning. Is this new to the U.S.? I mean, is this the closest our democracy has ever even come to something other than a democracy?
Well, absolutely not. It's interesting. Biden, in his speech, pointed back to the robber barons of the Gilded Age. And we associate the Gilded Age with great income inequality, but it's also an era of incredible political instability, political violence, partisanship, tribalism. And that political dysfunction underlined all the economic dysfunction. So in this era, as in the Gilded Age, I think until we can address our political problems in our democracy, we won't be able to address our economic issues that grow out of those.
You know, last April, you said that the 1892 race where Grover Cleveland became the first president elected twice in non-consecutive terms was nearly identical to what we were seeing then. Does the comparison still hold up now 9 months later? I mean, putting aside the candidate change from Biden to Harris, will historians look back on 2024 as history repeating itself?
Yeah, every race is new, every race is different, and this was a really unusual one. Historians will study it for centuries. But what's really important for our era and for the Gilded Age is not the candidates, not whether there was a president like Donald Trump in the past, but the electorate and the mood of our electorate, the grumpiness, the anger, the tribalism, the partisanship, the throw the bums out mentality we have every 4 years in these incredibly close elections looks so much like what elections looked like in the 1880s, 1890s, that this loop we're in right now feels a lot like the Gilded Age loop. And I think it's worthwhile to look how they ever got out of a loop like that, because we feel a little stuck today, I think.
Yeah, another thing you said there, here's the quote. If we share one central attribute with the Golden Age, it's not just the income inequality or the partisanship, but also the slow, stuttering realization that the progress we've been boasting about isn't coming. In this age of technology, you know, in an instant, are quick expectations of progress unrealistic? I mean, remember things like abolishing slavery, voting rights for minorities, that took decades.
Yes, and we have a constitution built on checks and balances, built on compromise, built on incremental change. So it is really tricky to live in a world where everything happens at the, swipe of a screen, and to look at this political system that is so slow and weighted. But that's honestly how you reform a system. The big changes we see in the past, when people manage to address their political instability, political violence, and tone it down, happen from slow incremental reforms. And I know that's not sexy, that's not exciting, but that's really how we build change over time. So I would worry a lot less about one individual election, and I'd worry more about cultivating a tone in democracy, a vibe almost in our culture. That is really what changes things from era to era.
You know, David French describes us as being in a state of relative political instability compared to other eras in our history. How long has it taken to stabilize the country after periods of instability? And can lessons and timetables of the past predict how long until we stabilize this time around?
Nope, that doesn't work. You'd like to think there's some way you can set your clock by history, but every era is different. Every era is new. What's really important, I think, is to look back at this history and see that we've had eras of instability, unhappiness, violence in our politics, and we've deliberately reformed them, that it can be done. I think people feel like we've driven off a precipice and everything is unprecedented, and kind of there's a gravity and a momentum to our politics that is unchangeable. People felt that way in the Gilded Age, and then reform movements built up the progressive era, built up the 20th century, built up the norms that we got used to in the 20th century. So as stuck as we feel and as cyclical and spiraling as our politics feel, people can make active reform. And studying history, this history in particular, is really eye-opening to see how people actively change the problems with their democracy. It honestly can be done. I'm not pessimistic about that element at all.
I'm glad to hear
that,
John
Grinspan.
You know what? I'm going to have you back on this show. You're terrific, and I very much enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.